Thank you to the annual meeting of council. The first item on the agenda is election of presiding member. Any nominations, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Jan Curtis.
Seconded by Councillor Chris Holly. Any other nominations? Okay, all those in favour of Councillor Curtis, please raise your hands. You are Councillor Curtis, you are duly elected. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is election of deputy presiding member for 24 to 25 municipal year. Can I have any nominations, please?
I nominate Councillor Sam Pritchard, please.
Thank you. Seconded.
Could I second?
Thank you. Any more nominations? All in favour of Sam Pritchard, Councillor Pritchard? Okay, Sam, you're duly elected. I believe Sam's online. I believe his grandmother was buried today, so he might not be in chamber. Okay, thank you very much anyway. The next item is apologies for absence. Over to you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, presiding member. I have apologies from councillors Alison Anthony, Adam Davis, Rebecca Fogarty, Erica Kirshner, Richard Lewis, Francesca O'Brien, David Phillips and Mike White. Are there any others?
Councillor Stewart Rice.
I'm here. I'm online.
Graham Thomas.
Okay, the next item is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. If I can call on Deb Smith, please. You, Deb.
Thank you, presiding member. The only item on the agenda tonight which gives rise to an interest is agenda item 8, constitutional matters. The report refers to the remuneration of all councillors, and normally this would be a personal and prejudicial interest. However, the Code of Conduct provides for an exemption, and in this instance it will be a personal interest only. So I will take a block declaration for a personal interest only in agenda item 8. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any interest in any other of the agenda items? No, thank you.
We then move on to the minutes then, and that's on pages 1 through to 7. I'll go through them page by page for accuracy, and that's pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Okay, all in agreement?
Move, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. 20 seconds. Thank you. All in agreement? Okay, thank you. The next items are my announcements, and the first one is a nice announcement. I'm delighted to announce the birth of Emrys Fogarty, newborn son of Councillor Rebecca Fogarty. Emrys was born on the 13th of May 2024. Councillor Rebecca Fogarty is the first serving Swansea councillor to give birth whilst being a serving councillor. So I'm sure I pass on your congratulations from everybody on to Councillor Rebecca Fogarty. Okay, the next item is Carlo Rabbiotti has recently resigned as a Gosainon Town Councillor. This resignation automatically ends his role as the Community Town Councillor representative on the Standards Committee. And on behalf of the authority, I'd like to thank Carlo Rabbiotti for his work with the Standards Committee. Okay. The Head of Democratic Services shall be bringing a report to our June 2024 Council meeting, setting out the process to seek a replacement. The next one is the Swansea Community Review 2023, and that's the Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales, the LD and BCW, is undertaking a community review of the Swansea Principal Council area. The first stage of the review asked that all interested parties to consider the current community boundaries and submit their views on any changes required to create communities that provide for effective and convenient local government. Today, the Commission published the draft proposals. This is the start of an 8-week consultation period, which ends on the 10th of July 24. The Commission welcomes any feedback on the draft proposals as well as the alternative suggestions for consideration. It's on HDPVS Wales Review, Swansea Community Review draft proposals. And to take part in the consultation, please send your views by email to consultations@boundaries.wales. The next is amendments and corrections to the Council's summons. And it's item I, item 12, Councillors' Development Strategy. There is a typographical error on page 111, paragraph 3.3, and the period should read 2022 to 2027. Okay, that's the end of my announcements. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 7, and that's the names of the councillors that the leader of the council has chosen to be members of the cabinet, and that's for information. Over to you, Leader.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm pleased to announce that there are no formal changes to the structure of cabinet this year or the councillors filling the roles. Can I place on record my thanks for the work done by all cabinet members over the last year, and the same team will be continuing into 24-25. There are some minor changes to responsibilities within the portfolios, and I've asked Mr. Evans if those can be circulated to all members early next week. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. The next item is item 8, and that's constitutional matters for 24-25. And can I call on Mr. Evans, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. It is a lengthy report, and you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to go through it all. It sets out the necessary constitutional matters that need to be enabled to ensure the efficient and lawful operation of council. Some points I want to point out that I've emailed around today, the amended lists for committee names, who's sitting on what, the member champions, and also the outside bodies list. I've got nothing else I need to add to the report, but I'll take any questions should anybody have anything.
Any questions from Mr. Evans, please? Any online? No? Okay, so we need to,
Happy to formally move, Chair.
okay, thank you. 22nd,
Happy to second.
okay. All in favour of the report? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Evans. The next item is item 9, and that's the naming proposal. And I'd like to call on Councillor Robert Francis Davies, please.
Could I just move the agenda item on the naming proposal, please?
Is there a seconder? Okay,
Chair, if I could just second and add a few comments, if I may. Obviously, we adopted a naming proposal recently, and in the first two outings, we've recognised women who have made significant contribution to Swansea. This third proposal comes on the very sad news of the passing of one of our key officers, Mr. Hugh Mowbray. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to work with Hugh, he was a significant force of nature within the officer corps and helped to deliver a number of the significant developments that you can see now coming to fruition in the city centre. Hugh was respected across the region as well as across the industry. We'd consulted with Hugh's family around the potential of doing this, and are very pleased to say that we're able to take forward the option of naming the yard behind the new Oceana, or the old Oceana development, the new 71-72 Kingsway development, as Mowbray Yard, and that would be the intention, and that I think is a fitting permanent addition to our city centre, and I think represents a permanent mark that he was left on the city centre for all of us. So thank you, Presiding Member.
Remove to the vote. Councillor Holly.
Presiding member, I can't think of a more fitting tribute to Hugh. Someone I worked with very closely for 8 years, and since then, and I have to say, he's really been a source of inspiration for many people, and he was well respected, as the leader has said, not just across the region, but in the industry right throughout the UK. I think I always remember talking to him and he was telling me that his father was one of the architects on this building. So it's quite appropriate that we recognise the amount of effort and the amount of skill he put into helping the regeneration of our city. And it is a sad effect that we have to do this, but of someone who will be sadly missed by everyone who knew him.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to record my support for this proposal. I think you made a massive contribution to the regeneration of this city, including the building which is going to be named after him. I think it's highly appropriate that he is commemorated in this way, so that people understand the contribution he made as an officer in this authority and how this city is benefiting from him. And losing him is a massive loss to this council, and I think he's irreplaceable. So I very much support this proposal. Thank you.
Harity.
Yeah, apologies, I lost my agenda with me, but Hugh Mowbray I worked very closely with over the last few years, as Councillor Holly said, worked with him closely over 8 years as well. Hugh Mowbray was one of those people that was irreplaceable. The work, his contribution to Swansea, over the years, everybody will pass a building that he had a part in. A sad loss to his family, a sad loss to his children, a sad loss to this council. I'm glad that we are naming him on Mowbray Yard behind 71 and 72 the Kingsway. His contribution was second to none. We say sometimes we get good officers, bad officers, but he was one of those officers which was really excelled. He was Swansea through and through. Not only was he highly regarded in Swansea, in Wales, the United Kingdom, but throughout Europe as well. I remember going to Mippin with him, where he would be walking down the street and there was people from all over Europe that recognized him, knew him, and knew his contribution. So it is really, really fitting.
Okay, we've been moved and seconded. So the recommendation is on page 39 and is that the council adopts the naming proposal as recommended by the Constitution Working Group. So can I have a show of hands in support, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's moved. Thank you. The next item is the Gower AONB, the rebranding proposals. And can I call on Mr. Councillor David Hopkins, please?
Thanks, Presiding Member. Yeah, it could be a great pleasure to move this this report. This already has gone out with wide consultation. It's also gone to the AUN, or what was called the AUN committee. This has been re-endorsed there. This will do. This is not going to undermine the protection of the beautiful area. In fact, it's all about enhancing it and bringing it in line with other AUNBs around the country. So there are 3 recommendations in front of us today, and it gives me great pleasure to move them recommendations.
Have a seconder, please.
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay. For anybody? No? Okay, we move to the vote then, please. And there are 3 recommendations.
Sorry, I got my hand up.
Oh, Thomas, I couldn't see you. Okay, come on in.
Sorry. Thanks. Sorry to butt in there, but I couldn't see if you could see my hand. Thank you. Obviously, I've been part of my ward's in the AUNB. And as you can imagine, I've been contacted by a couple of people with some reservations and worried about this part of the agenda. When I first read it, I was a bit worried, I have to say, but after reading the information, it does seem that it is bringing us in line with other AONBs, as the cabinet member said, and it is mainly sort of based around marketing and a rebranding of the AMB. So what I'd like to formally just ask the cabinet member is, could he confirm that there's no change to any planning, or that this won't change anything dramatically in the with regards to planning inside the AOMB? Thank you.
I can reassure the member, I give a commitment that this will not undermine any policy or any protection that the AOMB has and will continue to have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Thomas. Okay, the recommendations are on page 47. The three are there. It's Swansea Council approve an adoption of the proposed rebranding of the Gower A and B. The name Gower National Landscape as an area of outstanding natural beauty be adopted, and the Gower National Landscape recommits itself to nature recovery and inclusion in line with the original designation and purpose of the AONB. So can I have a show of hands in support, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. So we now move on to the next item, which is item 11. It's the Service Transformation Committee, the STC's annual reports 23-24. Can I call on Councillor Stewart, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. This report is a summary report pulling together the highlights of the work undertaken by the 5 service transformation committees during the previous year. I'd like to place on a record again my thanks to the chairs, the vice chairs, and the committee, all the committee members that have taken part in the really valuable work. As the report outlines, there are a number of outputs from the work of the STCs which have made their way through to Council and Cabinet for adoption as new policies or updated policies. So very, very grateful. You know, it re-emphasises our commitment to try and make sure that we pull forward into the Cabinet system the best parts of the old committee system that makes sure that every member of council has an opportunity to participate in the creation and delivery of council policy, not just the 10 or 11 members of the cabinet. And that's really the ethos behind the service transformation committees. And again, I would continue to encourage all members of council to participate in these works and in the work that this council takes forward as part of its corporate policy agenda. But again, Chair, I think it's a great piece of work, and I commend the work done by the committees over the last year. But I'll cede to any chairs who maybe want to make a contribution on behalf of their own committee, if that's in order. Thank you.
Can I have a second of the report first, please? And then...
For a second.
Okay. Call on Councillor Dirk, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. As a chairperson of the Education and Skills Committee, I'd like to pay tribute to the members of the committee in the year. Very challenging, very difficult. I mean, we are looking at the future of our education offer in Swansea, and the committee members have challenged intelligently, consistently throughout some very complex matters, and we produced what I think is an excellent report. It really adds value. I thank Councillor Robert Smith as a cabinet member for his consistent attendance. Helen Morgan-Rees, the Director of Education, and her team, but also Democratic Service colleagues, legal colleagues, and transport colleagues who've been fantastic. We had a workshop in the year which really added value to the school transport challenges that we face as well. So that has been fantastic. It's been a real, genuine, I think, democracy in action, if you like, I think. My one concern is the absence of Liberal councillors on the forward-thinking service transformation committees. I know decades of experience would add even more value if they decided to join. I would be delighted to see them on the committee. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dirk. Councillor Mandy Evans.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of Corporate Services and Financial Resilience, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the leader, cabinet members, Sam Owen especially from Democratic Services, but everyone in Democratic Services, the officers. I will say my political family from both sides of this chamber, because I was absent quite a bit last year. So sincere thanks for everyone who's contributed to this end of year report. As you can see, we addressed 5 items, but from me, it's sincere thanks, especially to Councillor Patience Bento, who stood up in my absence, and to all the members who stood and contributed and really committed to this end of year report and for your attendance. So sincerely, I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Phil Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Not to be left out. I'm chairing the economy and infrastructure. We had 7 topics in our work plan, and we held 2 workshops and 1 site visit. I'm not going to go into any of them in particular because the report is there and I know you've all read it. Our committee consists of 10 members like everybody else. There's 6 Labour, and I will mention them because I'm thanking them individually for the work they put in. Myself first. Councillors Ryland Doyle, Wendy Lewis, Paul Lloyd, Nicola Matthews, Mike White. From the Conservatives, Will Thomas, and Uplands representative Stuart Rice. I know you're not counting wrong. There's 2 missing, which are Lib Dems and Independents. And the amount of work that the Conservatives and the Uplands put in with Labour members, it shows how sadly missed the extra 2 might have been, because we as a committee, we look forward, not looking back. That's a scrutiny programme. I know it's hard at sometimes trying to hold certain people back because they want to look at what's gone on, and we try to look at what the council is going forward. The other thing is, with the members we had, our attendance was just over 80%, which I think is very good for a committee. So I'm happy to say, and I feel that all members were valued for their contributions. And I felt the opposition members as well. And I hope they say something, because I feel that they were valued as a committee, and they did, but their input was very good. I'd also like to thank the cabinet members who turned up to our meetings, and they give their input and their guidance to help us move forward. And that's all I can say, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Downing. Is there nobody else wishing to speak? Will, are you putting your hand up? Yeah. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thanks, Presiding Member. Yeah, I'd just like to thank the Chair really for all his nice words there, and it's a lot of work, but very good work, and he's done a fantastic job at highlighting some things that the council can do better, and I think we've all worked towards some great changes. So thanks to him for a good job, and thanks to the whole committee, because it's been enjoyable as well. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I don't think there's anybody else showing. No. Okay, the recommendation is on page 61. There are 2 recommendations: that Council notes the progress made at each Service Transformation Committee in 23-24, and in relation to the report by the Education and Skills Transformation Committee, Council endorses consideration of future consultation on specific proposals that will emerge from delivery of the transformation programmes, which will be presented to Cabinet in future reports. So can I have a show of hands in support of the motion, please? Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That's moved. We move on to item 12 then, please, and that's the Councillor Development Strategy. And I'd like to call on Mr. Hugh Evans, Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This Councillor Development Strategy is aimed to complement the Councillor Training Programme. It just sets out some learning, some ways to assist councillors in their roles, sets out some standards that we expect of certain individuals, and hopefully I ask you to consider adopting it.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Evans? No? Can I ask somebody to move the report then, please?
Chair, happy to formally move.
Second it.
Have the formally second.
Okay. Okay, the recommendation is on 107, and is that the draft Councillors Development Strategy be approved. So can I have a show of hands in support of the report, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. We move on to item 13 then, and that's the amendments to the Council's Constitution, the review of the Council's procedure rules 22, 23 and 24 relating to councillors' questions. And if I can call on Mr Hugh Evans again, please, Head of Dem Services.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This report has been before the Constitution Working Group a couple of times, and the current version in front of you has been recommended by that group to this council for adoption. I should point out that the Uplands Group, Councillor Peter May, has given notification of an amendment which he will need to raise today if you are going to do it, but I've got nothing to add to the report. Just to make the point that the reason for the proposal to amend the councillor questions is as outlined in paragraph 2 of the report. Nothing further to add.
Sorry, Mr Evans, do I need to go to the amendment first before I have a second?
Councillor Peter May will need to move the amendment in this meeting,
Yeah.
and it'll need to be seconded for
Councillor
it to be discussed.
Thank you, everybody. I move the Uplands Group amendment was circulated to members earlier today, so they had time to peruse it rather than a rabbit being pulled out of the hat. Hugh, could I ask out of courtesy, could you put it on the screen because it might fit? If you
can't put it on the screen, I'm sorry, because I don't have it translated.
Oh, all right.
So I apologise.
All right. Sorry about that informality. Reason for the amendment is, as Hugh alluded to, there were 4 issues mentioned in paragraph 2 of the report. And we sympathise with all of them, bar one of them, which is the councillors' questions and public questions element of it, where it prohibits a member of the public speaking or asking a question at a meeting, because it's been mentioned in a council question and it's not part of the main agenda. However, what we really primarily want to deal with is that not mentioned in any of these 4 reasons for changing the format of councillors' questions is the introduction of proportionality into Part A questions. Now, that wasn't an initial reason for the report, at least not stated in the official report. I don't know whether it's unofficial and I can't see it anywhere. However, if something wasn't broken, why do we need to fix it? In the appendix that I gave with my amendment, okay, I agree with limiting it to 12, and I fully empathise with the chief executive and the leader's aspirations to reduce the load on officers in asking in answering numerous questions from councillors in both Part A and Part B. But this report doesn't actually limit the workload at all. All it does is it actually delays some of that workload for Part B questions to a later date, which could easily be circumvented by a freedom of information request in any case, if members were minded to go down that route. So we're genuinely mystified why this sudden, I won't call it a calculation, I'll call it a concoction, because the concoction is not proportionate to the representation of the political groups. Why introduce it at all? There have been 17 opportunities at council for questions to be asked, 17 council meetings, and only 5 of them have exceeded the 12 questions permitted in any case. We've had council meetings where there have only been 3 or 6 Part A questions asked. So really, why is there a need to actually introduce proportionality? So the amendment is quite simple. All we need to do is, should more than 12 questions come in, just in the same way as we do now in deciding the order of questions, we draw lots, and then the questions that don't make the cut just get put into Part B, where the workload doesn't change in any case. So that's basically the substance of the amendment. And we're not really, we're really mystified why this has actually been brought in when it wasn't the reason for the report. And all of the things that the report was supposed to achieve in the first place haven't really been fixed.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Joy? Okay, thank you. Lyndon Jones.
Yeah, just to say that I support the amendment for those very reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Andrea Lewis, please.
Apologies, Chair. I raised my hand because initially Councillor May was responding to proportionality. And as we know, in terms of proportionality, the Labour administration is the largest political group. Therefore, by proportionality, they should have the largest number of questions, which is not what we're trying to achieve today. We're actually trying to achieve a limited amount of questions for officers to have a chance to be able to deal with them, presiding member. Thank you.
Lewis, I got Councillor Peter Black and then you, Leader. Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this amendment because it seems to me that we're actually trying to crack a nut with a large hammer. We effectively have a situation where, of the 5 occasions which Peter May has pointed out, I'd be surprised if we actually got more than 12 actually were taken in those council meetings. But my main objection to this, I mean, you know, if you want to limit them because we're not going to get more than 12 in the 20 minutes anyway. But my main objection to this is because it actually puts too much power in the hands of party groups. It enables the whips to determine which questions go forward, and it gives them control and effectively undermines the rights of backbenchers in all the party groups. It seems to me that that is the main reason why we shouldn't be having this sort of quota that we have now. But, you know, by all means limit it to 12, but, you know, let the ballot actually determine and let backbenchers scrutinise as they're meant to scrutinise and ask questions of the executive, because that's their job as well. It's not just the opposition's job to ask questions of the executive, it's also the backbenchers in the ruling group as well. And this is going to effectively stop them doing that properly. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Black. Leader.
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. It's not an amendment I can support. Councillor May has been involved in the discussions leading up to this report fully. He's had an opportunity to put forward amendments, ideas at the Constitutional Working Group, which is what all of the other parties have done. The reason we have a Constitutional Working Group is in order for us to work together before we bring a report like this forward, with the hope of finding consensus before it comes to the chamber. I'm quite surprised by Councillor Black's comments, actually, because my understanding is the final version of this report was actually agreed via a Liberal Democrat amendment at Constitutional Working Group, one that we were happy to debate and then support. In terms of the core elements of this, so just to reassure, because I think there's a little bit of misrepresentation of what is actually being proposed here. The rationale for trying to bring forward a change to councillor questions was very much because large technical questions were being submitted, often in the same area of the council, often highways technical questions, sometimes often from the same individuals in council, who are asking similar questions in a different way on a regular basis. But because they were multifaceted questions, it was very difficult to bring the information together in order to give a full response within the timeframes that are there between the submission of the question and the publication of the agenda. That is not a political issue for us. It is an officer issue for the technical officers having to pull together the information. So that was the driver for the change. We then went to look at how we could protect the right of members to still submit the questions they want to submit, but remove the time obligation on the officers. And that's where we got to where we are today. So if any group or any member wants to submit a question which has multiple parts to it, and using Councillor May's examples, you know, in March this year, 17 questions come in. Question 9, I think, which came from his group, had 5 parts to it. It was a long technical question. It took a long time to get the information together. And again, there's a risk when you're doing something like that, that you provide incorrect or incomplete information to the response to the question, which is not something, again, anybody would want. So this was about making sure that the balance is there. So if long technical questions come in under this rule, the presiding member would have the option to move that into Part B. It would still get answered. It just doesn't get answered immediately at the next council. It'll come in the following meeting. And of course, that information will be shared with all members as it does now. What the Part A then does is what Part A should really be, which is about simple, straightforward questions that allow us to then have a debate about those questions and for supplementaries to come in, also to give enough time for those supplementary debates to take place. So, this I would see as an improvement. I think it's an excellent amendment from the Liberal Democrat group. And as I said, it's one my group are happy to support as well. And I think what we've got to is a fairer system. As Councillor Lewis said, if Councillor May wanted to change the system, then the one way he could do it is to move away from being an Uplands party and being a Swansea party, go for trying to become the administration. And when you're the administration, you can work with parties to achieve your political agenda. But this is a cross-party solution, and I think it's a right and fair one.
Leader. Councillor O'Connor.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to support Peter Black and Peter May's acknowledgement of the changes, really, because sometimes I feel that those of us in a minority are perhaps sceptical of this, because it's our chance to get answers or maybe challenge. And for some of us, we feel like there's more and more obstacles in our way to maybe do this.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Unfortunately, I can't support the amendment because we have had this discussion and we've for a long time had discussions about council questions. And over the years, we've tried to reform them. We've brought in section B, and we did flirt with the idea of having a section C. Thank God we threw that out, because that would have made the system even worse. I understand all the arguments for and arguments against, but the one thing what we've got to do is we can't stand still. We know the position we're in. We know the position with the staffing. We know the position where we are with the various offices of the authority, and we know about the timescales involved in answering these questions. But on top of that, we need to be a bit sharper about how we deal with these questions as well, politically and by officers. But politically, I do accept we have got to get a bit sharper with them. The one thing I would say is that what isn't in here, which we did ask, is for a 12-month review. And that I think we've got to do, because we've got to make sure that if we change it, that we review it again to make sure it's working. And it's working for everyone. And I think that's important. But as I say, I can't support the notice of motion. Sorry, I can't support the amendment, but and fully support the report as it stands.
Councillor May.
To come back on one or two things Councillor Stewart said. I did attend the Constitutional Working Group. Normally decisions in the Constitutional Working Group, you were there with me, are taken forward by consensus. Both Councillor Holly and Councillor Stewart weren't actually at the Constitutional Working Group when we had a vote of 3-2, which is the first time I've known something hasn't carried through by consensus. And in that group, it was suggested that I would be perfectly entitled to make my representations at council because of the unusual situation that the Constitutional Working Group hadn't come to something at consensus. The other point I'd like to pick up on is Councillor Stewart has alluded sort of for the first time, because I can't see it anywhere in the report, and it would have been helpful if it had been in the report, because we could have understood the reasons about multifaceted questions. Now, I've now known this for the first time only 5 minutes ago. But if that was a reason, that could have actually been put in the report without Councillor Stewart having to actually say it in a council meeting as an extra reason for it to be reformed, because I was none the wiser until now.
Yeah, just a point of information on that one. I think the basis of the challenge of multifaceted, long technical questions was something discussed at length, not just in one, but in many sessions of the Constitutional Working Group. I know I was not at the latest meeting because I had a clash with the clash of commitments, But I know in the previous meetings that was one of the bases for initiating the discussion, which was there were long questions coming in, which were taking a disproportionate amount of officer time to try and draw together large amounts of data to make sure they gave accurate answers to members. I think the reality is those questions can still be submitted. The only difference now is they will likely fall into a category, the category B, which will be answered as soon as they can, probably not at the immediate council, but at the following one.
It's not often I do this. I got to support the leader of this. We did have quite a few discussions in Constitution Working Group about the way in which the council, the questions are put together, and that was one of the multifaceted questions, if you like it. But it was about getting smarter about asking the questions as well. And I think, you know, we have to get a little bit realistic. We have got a lot less staff, and we've got to decide how we're going to do it in future. And that's why we've got to have this review.
Okay, I'm going to move to the amendment first. So can I have a show of hands in support of the amendment, please? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, the amendment has fallen, so I'll go back to the substantive report. And can I have a show of, I think we've added, moved and seconded, sorry, Hugh.
Just quickly, just to pick up a point Councillor Hawley did make, the CWG did ask for a review in 12 months, so that should be added to the recommendation, just for clarity.
Yeah, Chair, and I was just going to, that's what I was just going to say. I think it's important that we do include that and that we have a review in 12 months. But I don't think I formally moved the report, so I'll do that now. And obviously, if you want to call for a seconder.
Can I have a seconder then, please?
Definitely second.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Okay, that's been put in. Can I have a show of hands in support of the report, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's moved. Thank you very much. We move on to the next item then, and that's item 14. And it's the amendment to the council's constitution, the family absence procedure rules. And I'd like to call on Mr. Evans, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Well, to start off with the good news we heard in the announcement earlier with a birth of a newborn baby to a councillor. That in turn has made me review our family absence rules. Now, then, the family absence rules have existed with the councils since legislation back in 2011 from Welsh Government. However, when I was actually dealing with them to assist Councillor Fogarty, I did find them a little bit difficult to locate, and I don't want that. So to overcome that, rather than having people to search through things, I've created the family absence procedure rules, which I would like to place within the council constitution, and it sets out what needs to be done, makes it easier for councillors and for officers to ensure those things are followed. So that's what I've laid out in the report, which I hope you support. On top of that, I'd like to add an additional recommendation. And the recommendation is a little bit long. I apologise for that. Should a councillor in receipt of a civic salary or a senior salary be entitled to a period of family absence, then a substitute member shall be appointed to cover those responsibilities. The substitute member shall be eligible to be paid a civic salary or a senior salary for the period of the family absence. And just by way of a wider note, to follow the legislation, I'd have to inform the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales within, I think it's 14 days of any decision taken. And one final point, not as a recommendation, just to make the point that with the family absence now in place, Councillor Matthew Jones will be added to the Climate Change and Nature Recovery STC as a substitute ordinary member. So that's just to cover the loss, to keep the proportionality correct for all the groups. So with that in mind, I hope you support the recommendations and the amended recommendation.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I thank Mr. Evans for the work he's done on this report? And obviously, it's important that having the legislation in place, and if you remember, as a council, we have championed the changes that Welsh Government were asking us to look at, including job share, including making sure that we do all we can to encourage younger people into politics and a more diverse group of councillors to participate in politics, or group of people to participate in councillor politics. That includes making sure that people can obviously, who people may have young families or want to start young families, have the opportunity to continue their careers to the higher levels of the political structures within each organisation. So therefore, I think that this piece of work is absolutely right, and the amendment Mr. Evans has made is again right, because you know, given that only female councillors can become pregnant and only female councillors can therefore have a baby to take leave, I think it's important that we make sure that they don't suffer detriment from having a baby and going off on leave, and that includes financial detriment. So for all of those reasons, you know, I think one of the challenges of this is when legislation is written, you then have to turn it into practice, and you have to think through the logical impacts of wanting to make sure you do the right thing, support people through that period in their lives. And I absolutely think Mr. Evans has pitched this one right, so I would hope members would all support. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Mr. Black.
Thank you, Chair. Just very much support this, and I think it's a very important reform. I may have misunderstood the legislation, or I may not be familiar with the regulations. My understanding is if a councillor is absent from meetings for 6 months, they will give up their seat unless the council passes a resolution. As some of these leaves are for 6 months, will we need to pass a resolution to cover that whenever someone takes the full 6 months leave?
That is a good question. The maximum allowable under a family absence is 26 weeks, hence 6 months. Councillor Fogarty could technically fall foul of that, but I would be ensuring that she doesn't, and I would bring a report if I felt that that would trigger that problem. So the legislation isn't clear whether it gets us round the 6 months. So I would be bringing a report in 5 months' time to address it if I feared that we were in danger.
I think, Chair, that we need to keep it monitor that, because if the legislation doesn't cover it, we need to ensure that someone doesn't inadvertently lose their seat by being absent for 6 months.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think it's unreasonable for you to make that decision tonight. It's quite acceptable under Section 85 of the Local Government Act 72, just to give that leave of absence should it go beyond.
Yeah, I wasn't just referring to Councillor Fogarty, I was referring to future instances as well. You know,
yeah, shall I add that as an additional recommendation then for family absences? We haven't. No, it's got family absence. Sorry, what the legislation the councillor. Sorry,
I was under the impression that the absenteeism is 6 months. We automatically, we actually voted at the time so that as long as the report was brought back, we would accept it.
Sorry, we're talking slightly cross purposes here. The legislation that Councillor Black is talking about is specifically Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. That is the period. I sad that I remember what the section is, but that is specifically relating to an absence of a councillor. If a councillor is absent from meeting for a period of 6 months, they are automatically debarred. There is no, you know, it's no sorry, you're gone. So what Councillor Black is seeking to do here is to ensure that the 6 months we're granting under the family absence doesn't make us fall foul of Section 85. No. For any councillor that's on sick, I've got to bring a separate report for individual councillor. So this decision now will only be relating to the family absence procedure rules. I will build in that trigger clause that obviously the salary would cease. The senior salary would cease after 26 weeks, but the period of absence would need not cease. And that's the subtle difference that you're trying to capture here, which I 100% agree with.
Yeah, Presiding Member, I absolutely support that. I think it would be a crazy situation if we were to grant maternity leave in that period of 6 months absence, only to then have the councillor fall foul of the rules. So we need to tidy that up, make sure that doesn't happen. So I think we leave that to Mr. Evans to make sure that that is incorporated in the revised policy.
Can I propose it for the, please?
Could I just formally second the report?
Okay, with the added recommendations and amendments, are we all happy to support the report, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's moved. Thank you. Move on to item 15, and that's the amendments to the council's constitution. And I'll hand over to Deb Smith, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This agenda item 15 is a very short report, just detailing some changes to the names of some service areas to bring it up to date, and an updated senior management team chart, which goes at part 7 of the Constitution. So that's just been brought up to date with some changes there. I've made them under delegated authority. It's for information only. There's no vote on this matter.
Okay, happy to accept the report? Yep. Okay, thank you. It's now the time for the common seal, so I need a vote for that, please. So all in favour of the common seal? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. That's the end of the council agenda, but I think we've got to now move to all the committees. I think it's over to you, Mr. Evans.
Finishing the recording, give me a moment.